Good evening, everybody. Rob here at WesternPacificWeather.com. It is currently the 26th of October, 2010, and going on right about 2000 Japan Standard Time. That's right around 11 Zulu for all those of you worldwide. Just this evening update here, because we are closely monitoring Typhoon Chaba, or Katrina right in here. It's moving about northwest, about 8 knots right now. Expecting this to gradually start moving due north and eventually off to the northeast here in the next 48 to 72 hours. But right now, it looks like it's going to be CPing rather close to Okinawa, and all eyes are actually on the Ryukyu Islands right in here as this storm looks like it's going to be threatening it. So let's zoom in a little bit on this storm and explain what's going on here, what's the driving force behind what's going to be happening with the system. Now let's show the high definition MT sat here. You can see some, basically these are cloud lines farther up here to the north in the East China Sea. And you see this eddy right here. This looks like kind of balls moving behind this island right up here, the island of Jeju-do. This is actually indicating a very strong northerly wind. And it's coming out of north, and a lot of cold air convection shown on the thickness charts here. So this is basically what we call a cold surge out here in the Western Pacific. A big burst of cold air coming from the Siberian high farther up to the north, which is shown on this chart, at a pressure of 1,042 millibars, and this is all drifting to the southeast right now, and it's going to start interacting with our typhoon here as this starts to drift to the north, increasing the gradient here. So that's actually going to be a very pivotal role here as far as winds and rainfall here on Okinawa. Going back to the stat shot here, you can already see the effects of this high on Chaba here. On the northwestern periphery, lots of dry air that's actually getting enveloped inside the storm, and this is overall due to that cold air and that strong northerly wind up here. But on the southwestern side, there was very good equatorial outflow and inflow right in here, with much of the convection actually wrapped up in this area right in here, which we can see on the microwave imagery, showing a whole wide spread of convection on the southwestern periphery here, and also noting an eye wall developing on this shot right in here. You can't not be able to see this on IR imagery due to the overcasted series, but overall it looks like an eye is actually starting to develop on this typhoon here. But also noting the amount of dry air here indicated by this part in blue right in here, and that's indicating that high pressure moving in from the north as well. So now that we've pretty much stated that this high pressure up here to the north is already having an effect on the system, how is it going to affect it further into the future and further into the track here? Well, it's already stated on several of my last updates. I like to refer to tropical systems as water flowing downhill, basically. Never going to want to flow uphill or at a higher pressure in this case here. So it's actually going to want to move toward the northeast to this upper level trough, this overall low pressure sitting up there off of the Honshu coast right in this region. And that's really good news for Okinawa and most of the Ryukyu Islands. As this high pressure builds in from the northwest here, it's basically going to move this storm farther to east just off the islands. Now the system is going to drift to the northwest, but once it starts to ride into this high pressure here, it's going to definitely get sheared off on the northwestern periphery and then churn off to the northeast here. Right now though, look, as you can see, this troughing up here to the north, it looks like it's actually putting a little bit of pressure on this high up here farther up north here. So the current track actually is taking it just off of the Okinawa coast here, and it's going to follow this troughing farther in the north, making landfall near Shikoku and the east coast of Honshu, again farther up to the north here. And that's basically what JTWC is saying right here, showing the system gradually move up to the northwest and then to the northeast, maxing out right around 85, gusting to 105 knots. Now, the overall intensity of the system has decreased since its last warning, basically due to that amount of shear and the amount of the cold surge in from the north here. Now, this does not take away from the overall wind effect, though, on Okinawa here. As this system moves to the east, it's going to interact with that high there. This is really going to increase the gradient-induced winds throughout this region and all of the Ryukyu Islands. So I wouldn't be surprised to see gale force winds and possibly gusting up even above typhoon strength winds throughout much of these islands here, not directly from the system itself, but due to that gradient-induced winds interacting with the high pressure moving in from the northwest. And also showing JMA's warning here, basically on the similar track as HTWC, the center of this cone right in here, just taking it to the east of Okinawa here. Also noting that if this shear plays a more pivotal role and actually strengthens on the northwestern periphery of the storm, much of Okinawa might even get a little bit of release from the raw precipitation from the storm. But just to a final note here, that the cone still extends clear from here on the western side of Ryukyu Islands, farther out to the east here. This system could just turn and directly shoot off this way, but right now this pretty confident on the track right here. But just noting there's still that wide range of cone, and if the system does tend to move towards the west here and towards the western side of the Ryukyu Islands, that will put them right in the right front quadrant of this storm, and which is really the strongest part of the storm right now, as that's the majority of the outflow, majority of the organization in the right front front quadrant. Right now, zooming in on GMA's radar of Okinawa, just showing some of these outer rain bands starting to make their way in towards the islands here. And just to note that with that strong northerly wind, and once it starts interacting with these outer rain bands, should start to see these winds picking up much more out of the northeast here over Okinawa. So just another thing I want to note here, just check Kadeena's website, and still looks like they're in T-Core 4 throughout much of the island here. Some rumors of T-Core 3 there as well, and would not be surprised if that warning gets posted overnight tonight here in Okinawa. And looking out into the long range here, it looks like many of these areas here in the Kanto Plains shown here is this basically big bright city area. If anybody's ever curious what I'm talking about, it's basically the Tokyo Plains right in here. And looks like this is going to see some precipitation this coming weekend, this Halloween weekend here. So I know many people probably have plans taking their kids out and such. It actually looks like it's going to basically get rained out and still going to have some gale force conditions as this system moves off towards the northeast. Most of the models are in pretty good agreement of that. So keep a close eye on that for anybody who's listening from this entire region up here. But that's all for today. Thank you for listening to westernpacificweather.com. If you have any questions, you can field me to them there. Have a few updates to the site there and make it a little bit easier to ask questions. And you can also find me at storm2k.org. Plenty of meteorological sound people there who would love to answer your questions as well if I'm not available or if you just don't feel like answering or asking me. And lastly, westernpacificweather.com does have a Facebook fan page now if you want to join that and follow along with any updates. So thank you for listening and have a great day, everybody. Bye.